Hey, friends.
Howdy,
How's it going?
folks.
Taylor made the comment earlier that she was concerned that not everyone here was a real developer because you're up so early.
You surprised me, but pleasantly surprised, so I'll take it.
So I am Scott Hanselman, and this is Taylor Poindexter.
Yeah.
Taylor is an engineering manager at Spotify and just generally kicking butt at all the things that she tries.
And this is Scott Hanselman. So he was recently promoted to the VP of Developer Community at Microsoft, so let's give it up for him. And also, he's one of my good friends. And so one thing I appreciate about Scott is despite the fact that he's been in the tech industry as long as I've been alive, he's still been able to maintain that spirit about him and keep helping people and pushing things forward. And so I'm looking forward to doing this today with him.
I appreciate that. Elapsed time 3 minutes before you called me old. So that made me feel really good and very welcome. So thank you for that gift.
Anytime.
We all want you to feel welcome, just as you have welcomed me in my old age. And that's really a theme of our talk, and certainly a theme of Strange Loop, which is why I think that we all fit together so nicely, is feeling that you are in a welcoming space. Absolutely. So what we're going to try to talk, applause for welcoming. This is a good tip, actually, for anyone who's doing a keynote, is if you just need to have evocative stock photography with meaningful words, and then you make awkward pauses, and then someone is going to, empathy. Right?
They're naturals. You're all naturals.
Just remember that for later when it gets really awkward.
I definitely will.
It's going to be great. All right, cool. So we just noticed also that we can't see our next slide from that angle, so we're going to go and just take a look at what our next slide is. Thanks for your patience, friends. All right, so we want to talk about what meaning means in creating a career and finding that meaning for yourself. For some of us, it's money. For some of us, it's a sense of community, like communities like this. For some of us, that community is virtual, and for some of us, it is physical. I've also been reflecting on this promotion that I got, which is this awkward relationship that I have with both capitalism, which made the promotion possible, and also the compliment that it is when your boss gives you a promotion. It's a compliment. And you know how you're supposed to take a compliment and just shut up and say, thank you. But I'm from Portland, which is basically being Canadian. So I'm like, oh, sorry, oh, you. So anytime anyone gives me a compliment, like a promotion or whatever, so when I got this promo, I didn't know how to deal with it, so I went on a thank you tour. And I spent 2 days calling everyone that helped me, starting with my 5th grade English teacher, my 7th grade math teacher, my 8th grade history teacher, and then the professor at Portland Community College that got me into software engineering. And I went all the way up through until all of my bosses. And at every stop on this tour, and some of them I had to really dig up in like retirement homes and beaches and stuff in Miami.
How long has it been since you were in 5th grade?
Oh. That's so mean.
We're friends, I promise I really care for him.
I was in 5th grade in 1984.
Wow.
Where were you in 1984, Taylor?
Not even thought of.
Yeah. And in doing that, they were like, wow, what a wonderful professional career you've had. And like they were congratulating me, and we were going back and forth complimenting each other. And I still feel like I'm not a professional. So I've decided that I think there are no professionals, because in talking to my computer science teacher from Portland Community College, which is a 2-year school in Portland, I realized that every single programming language, every technique, every operating system that I learned in school no longer exists, except for C.
There's something.
That is something, right? So that means we should all be programming in C. Good night, everybody. So if there's really no professionals, like maybe I'm just an amateur and I'm just kind of making it up as I go along. And if we're all amateurs, then what are we really experts at? And this has caused a lot of ennui, malaise. I'm using all my fancy French words to describe what that feels like. It's very much a sense of history and what the hell have I been doing for the last 32 years? But then I realized that it's okay because everyone is an expert at something. And the one thing that I am an expert in is my own journey and how I got here and the plan and the non-plans that caused it all to happen. And in doing all of that, I've been finding meaning in, for me, helping people, lifting people up, creating generational wealth in an awkward system, and enjoying community.
Absolutely.
And in doing that, I'm finding myself spending less time on social media, which I have discovered is algorithmically designed to make me feel bad about myself.
Yeah.
And the algorithms are different. Like we talked about this,
Yeah.
because you were like, well, they don't all make me feel bad.
Yeah.
It's like, well, TikTok teaches me new dances. Instagram says I should have a private jet, and I don't have one. Facebook tells me that my high school friends are doing better than me. Like each algorithm is tuned to make you feel bad about yourself in a different way.
Yeah.
Do you remember when Little Bow Wow was on an airplane here? This is actually a little screenshot here. This is a Little Bow Wow on Instagram getting on his private jet. And then a couple hours later, this is Little Bow Wow and Coach on Delta. And it turned out that that was actually the Google image for search for private jet. It was the first thing that came up. Now, this is no disrespect to Bow Wow, but it was just like a reminder that, like, that's okay. If Bow Wow doesn't have a private jet, I don't need one. So I am totally fine in the middle seat and coach that I took to get here. Yeah. I assume you were comfortable as well?
I'm an aisle seat gal.
You got an aisle seat?
Yeah, the tall guy near the window tried to get me to switch, but I said no.
So don't let Little Bow Wow get you down. Give yourself a little bit of grace.
Absolutely. And so when you're making sure that you're not comparing yourselves to others, I also want to make sure that you're giving yourself grace. In this screenshot right here, there's two people that I deem incredibly successful, and both of them have taken L's. One of them is Suzanne Young. She's a New York Times bestseller. She was planning to have a career high, have people come, talk about her book. No one showed up. And then Scott empathized with her and let her know that there was a time where he was expecting to have a career high. 1,200 people show up, only for 2 people to show up, and I think one of them was a priest, right?
It was at Comdex, which is a conference that came and went before you were born, and I was supposed to give a talk in front of 1,000 people, and it didn't fill up, and I didn't understand where everybody was, and I heard some laughter across the hallway, which is never a good sign. And it turns out there was a young Finnish gentleman who was coming out with a new operating system at the time. His name was Linus.
Oh, not a big deal.
So they were at his talk. My talk had 2 people show up, one developer with, I think, the Nebraska Department of Forestry, and then a priest. So I sat on the edge of the stairs, and I taught this priest how to make websites. So I did help the church.
But you had impact. Impact nonetheless. And in that moment, how did you feel?
I felt like that was the lowest and worst thing that could have ever happened to a human. Yeah. But it didn't matter at all.
Yeah, with a little bit of perspective, and I don't know how many years it's been since it happened. You're totally fine. You're the freaking VP. Life is good. And so that's the thing. If people who I consider to be extremely successful, and I'm sure many of you do too, can take some L's, it's okay if you do too. It's all part of the process. Success is not linear, and we're all just figuring it out along the way. Even for myself, this is a video of me in the pandemic towards the end, resigning and going into an empty office and pouring myself one last drink of scotch. But it was also a time when I had to give myself a little bit of grace, because I had worked over a year in the pandemic from my tiny condo at a startup, and we all know that startups are chaos to begin with, layer on the chaos of a panini, and it was just a lot. But I made it through, and as life got a little bit more normal, I realized that I hated this job. It had gone through a lot of change, and I wanted to switch things up. But any time that I went to try to job hunt, I just could not find the spoons to do it. And then I found myself talking to myself in a way that I would never talk to anybody, and let alone somebody that I care about. And so it ended up getting to a point where I actually had to give myself some grace, and I ended up taking a sabbatical. Ended up being able to get some genuine rest so that I could then launch into my job hunt and find the exact job that I needed. And so, even though taking rest can seem like a waste, sometimes it can be exactly what you need to take yourself to the next level. So give yourself some grace, take some rest, and it's completely okay. And that grace can also help you find what is meaningful to you in your career. At this time, I was a senior software engineer, but now I'm an engineering manager. Through some reflection, I realized that I no longer wanted to be an IC, and I wanted to take on the chaos that was management. And since careers are long, we're going to have to take some calculated risks. But sometimes we're bad at math, and that's okay. Scott has taken some L's, I've taken some L's. It's okay, it's all part of the process.
You're making me think about an L, if I may.
Yeah, please, throw out the L's.
I was throw out some L's. All I throw out is L's, Taylor.
I know.
I want to tell you a story about mansplaining at scale. I live in Portland, and I drive up to Seattle to work at Microsoft every, 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah. And I was doing some web API work on, and I was getting deep in the bowels of HTTP. And I was in Building 42 in the kitchen where you get all the free soda. So I was there mainlining Diet Coke and talking about, HTTP verbs and what was wrong with them and why they sucked. And a lovely gentleman walked in who looked kind of like a Danish Anderson Cooper. Just, had all his hair, and it was Snow White, and he was charming, and he got his coffee, and he kind of like joined the circle of us complaining about HTTP, and we vibed a little bit and had a little back and forth, and then he walked away, and I was ranting. And then my buddy says, "Do you know who that was?" Now, just for you, as an aside, that never goes well. Whatever comes after, do you know who that was? It's going to be Taylor Swift. It's going to be Beyonce. It's going to be somebody. So you just take the L immediately. But I did not. I persisted. Who was it? Who do I care? Well, that was Heinrich Frisk Nielsen. Who's Heinrich Frisk Nielsen? Oh, why don't you Google him with Bing? So it turns out that Heinrich Frisk Nielsen wrote the specification for HTTP. And he just happened to work in Building 42. He was Tim Berners-Lee's intern. So you think that you're taking an L. I explained HTTP to the guy that wrote the specification. Good night, everybody.
See you, Scott.
And, this is the thing, though. Like, we're not experts. No one's an expert. We're all amateurs. I love that you were a senior engineer and now you're a manager. Do you put senior on everything? Do you insist that people call you senior?
Every time.
No?
Right, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
And that's cool because you like, the title is the title, right? Yeah. Like, I didn't, my kids have to call me VP now, but nobody else, right? It's a balance, right? So this is Heinrich Nielsen's boss, Tim Berners-Lee. He's actually Sir Tim Berners-Lee, because he's got he's a knight or whatever, like Captain Picard. And he was doing a video here on web development. I want to point out his title here. He could have said senior. But the real flex, the missing flex here was that Tim Berners-Lee could have just put the. Can you imagine getting a business? Oh, what the? Well, you're hired. Yes, good times. This clicker is killing me. I think the thing that Taylor and I share is a focus on being deliberate and intentional. Yeah. We all have stories like that. They're fun, they're painful, they make you wince. They wake you up at 4 or 5 in the morning the night before a talk at Strange Loop, and you just go, oh, why did I say that to the guy that invented HTTP? But in doing that, how we react and bring meaning to those experiences is important, and we need to do it in an intentional and a deliberate way. You said take the L. That's a funny phrase, but you're actually saying sit in it. Yeah. And steep in the tea that you have made.
Sometimes you got to.
Which I think is super important. And also in this thank you tour that I went and did, I wanted to think about what it meant to dissect luck, because I tell people that luck is that my entire career is luck. How much luck was involved in your career?
A little bit.
A little bit. Yeah. Mostly just intense skill.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So the formula, though, for luck is a known formula. it is opportunity plus being prepared. And this is really significant because we may have prepared differently, we may have had different opportunities. The result, though, is that we're here, we have these jobs, and we have these opportunities. And I realized that there are so many people out there that are deeply prepared that have had no opportunities.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch of people who got opportunities just falling at them, but they're not doing the work.
Yeah.
So I think we both agree that it is this balance that creates luck.
Absolutely. And like you really can't get the luck, like Scott is saying, without the work. I feel like, again, with social media, at times it can feel like, oh, it's just super easy. Scott and Taylor just breezing through life. But we're doing the work also behind the scenes, even if Scott's not throwing his L's up on Twitter. It's happening, I'm taking L's, we're figuring it out, and we're continuing to put in that work.
Right. And like I realize that we live in a time on Beyonce's internet where Twitter is a dumpster fire where you can just go and ask open-ended questions about JavaScript and get 20,000 followers in a week. Yeah. And that's now DevRel, right? That's maybe opportunity, but it's not being prepared, and that's not doing the work. Yeah. And hanging out in the lobby of the Hilton is the opposite of getting the work done. Yeah. So we have to find that balance between having a sabbatical, feeding our spirit, and spending time with our community, and disappearing for 3 months and grinding and doing the thing, and then coming back, and then maybe doing a talk about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So intentionality can breed good things.
Absolutely. And so while you're focusing on being intentional, I'm here to tell you now that if money is meaningful to you, it's okay to be intentional about it. I know in my career, because I do care about the money that I make and how much of it I make, people have made me feel bad about it. But I like to remind people that we live in a capitalistic society. So money can get me a lot of things. Living the life that I want to lead, taking care of my family, making sure that they're medically taken care of. So if you want to prioritize it, that is more than okay. And another thing for me with money is that the ego boost. As a Black woman, I know that we have historically been underpaid, so I love making sure that I'm doing my due diligence to make sure that I am not part of that statistic and getting that ego bump every time it happens. And I'm not saying you have to be intentional in the way that I did in my last job hunt, which was directly tweeting out exactly the base salary that I want and the other requirements that I want in said job. But by letting your company know that you are caring about money, it can actually get it to you faster, especially if you're going out of your way to do the work that you need to make it happen. And for those who do not know, I made this big salary on the back of PHP and Laravel. And honestly, it's a hill that I would die on. Like when I was a senior software engineer, it was for PHP and Laravel. If you do need a backend service, I highly recommend checking it out. And here's Scott right here mentioning that money can be the motive. This person of this, Scott is replying to is saying that you need the passion to be in the dev community. But I'm here to tell you now, and I think Scott would agree if his tweet is true, that you can just do it for the money.
It's okay. And like one of the benefits of being an old man on the internet is you can find takes like this and just reply with like, nah. It's okay. And that's cool. Like, look at that. Like, if I could eat, Chipotle based on likes, I did okay on that one. But like, this is a stupid take.
Yeah.
Here's the deal. Like, two things can be true at the same time.
They can.
Money's good and passion is good.
Yeah.
And having a balance of both is probably best. But don't go and say, only people should code. You should only be a plumber if you're passionate about the pipes. That's stupid.
It's stupid. And the thing is that like, this person is saying you won't be innovative. But most of us like, okay, I work for Spotify. My team is doing advertisement stuff. We may not be like the people that are driving innovation, but we're pretty dang good at our jobs. And money can motivate us to be good at our jobs because if taking care of the people that we love most is the thing, that is more than okay. I may not be the #1 engineer in the world creating all the new tech that you all will then use, but I'm okay with that. I don't know about you, Scott.
I am deeply okay with that. And in fact, a lot of people don't realize that I went to Microsoft originally for the healthcare.
Yeah.
Because I'm type 1 diabetic and I've got an insulin pump and a bunch of equipment. It costs me a couple of grand every month to stay alive, and Microsoft had really good healthcare.
Yeah.
So if you ask me, like on the street, why I went to work there, it would be like, well, that, to help the billions of people achieve their best selves. But really the answer was,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, it's all that free insulin. But also when I went to Microsoft, people were calling me a sellout because I was an open source person. I spent 15 years doing open source, and then I joined Microsoft, and it hurt. They were like, "You're a sellout." Oh, Microsoft with a $sign. Oh. You suck, Hanselman. And like that made me feel bad, and it took a while to get over that. You know what I mean? But I went internally and I dug deep, and I found it in myself to feel good about my experience working at Microsoft.
Showing some grit there, making it through.
But actually, one of the things that I'm super passionate about is healthcare. And speaking of diabetes, here's a picture of baby Hanselman. Oh,
Ow, ow.
What they're doing is they're mourning the hair. That was actually not an aw. That was like, aw. That is a picture of me in the Oregonian in the late 90s because I wrote an application to manage my blood sugar on the Palm Pilot. And let's see. All right, this is really useful, right? I heard money, they applaud for money, empathy, and Palm Pilot.
Just keep throwing them out, keep throwing them out.
We need to get Harry Mack in here to do an improvised rap on those 3 words. This is going to be great. I also want to call out the Fresca bottles on top of the Sony Trinitron right there. That is, I don't know why. They're like, we're going to come and take a picture of you. Don't clean up.
They wanted to really capture the essence of how you're working.
Yeah, they want to capture the essence of diabetes. I love that you wrote a diabetes app. Do you think the Fresca was involved? No, that's actually sugar-free, but still. But creating an application that helped people manage their blood sugar got me excited and got me involved. And since then, I've been doing advocacy work with open source artificial pancreases, which I'm currently actually running an open source artificial pancreas right now.
Hell yeah.
So that's super important.
Can you make quick?
So let's just mourn baby Hanselman for a second.
Oh, shit.
Just needed an animated GIF of me getting old, Taylor. Sorry. You go ahead. I'll be over here drinking soda pop. Sorry. Please continue.
And so also as we're in our careers, making sure that we're doing something meaningful can be highly personal. What I like doing and what Scott likes doing is going to be completely different, but that's totally part of the process as well. So if you're comparing yourselves to others in that way, also make sure that you're not doing that and genuinely listening to yourself to make sure that whatever you are feeling is okay. When I first started this career, as I mentioned, I ended up wanting to work towards being a senior software engineer. That happened. I ended up having my startup acquired, layoffs, mass attrition, a bunch of chaos with leadership, and I was burnt out. But what they ended up doing, because I was one of 3 back-end engineers that had the knowledge that they had bought the company for, they gave me a team. Again, not against my will, but I was not thrilled. And so, to my surprise, I ended up loving it. When I started my career, I had a manager that was awful. And so being able to carve out a little safe corner in the company where a team was productive and happy fulfilled me in a way that I never could have imagined. And so I abandoned that IC path and then went to, my clicker's not working either. Went to being an engineering manager, which is what I am now. So shift happens, that is okay. Listen to yourself and make sure you're constantly recalibrating exactly what direction you want to go to make it happen.
When in your career did you start to drink to excess? Because I know on Instagram you're a woman with whiskey, and I know that if there's 2 things that we do a lot of is whiskey and diet soda pop.
Oh yeah.
I think is that a coping mechanism? Because it's okay that I'm a diet soda sommelier.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm a whiskey connoisseur.
Yeah, because I'm drinking Diet Pepsi because it's the only thing they had here.
That's actually whiskey
and
in that bottle.
This is whiskey? I'm not very happy about this.
I was actually surprised to see you pick it up. I
It's
saw the Diet Pepsi.
It's the only option that I had. And it was weird because it got the retro bottle, but there's a whole thing here.
Desperate
but I knew
times.
immediately it was a good week.
Okay.
But you were a senior engineer, and I think of when I think of you, I think of hacker Taylor.
Yeah, exactly. Right? That's me every day at my startup.
But that wasn't the meaning that you wanted. Being a senior engineer wasn't where you found meaning.
Yeah, eventually. At the time, I thought that is what I found meaning in. But what I really was doing was trying to prove that first manager wrong. So I was like hell-bent on getting the senior software engineer because he told me I would never make it in tech. And then once I got there, I was like, ooh, okay, perfect. But then once I really like listened to myself, I realized it wasn't what poured into me.
As I am kind of getting towards the waning years of my career and thinking about when I'm going to retire, I think about how stuff that I say might land. And I worry sometimes if I tell someone, you know, you need to show a little resilience. You need a little, you used the word grit yesterday.
Yeah.
You need to show grit, it might land wrong. Because sometimes if I go, let's say I go on Twitter, I'm like, y'all need to stop screwing around, you need to do your job. You know, I'm going to switch jobs every 3 months. You need to stay at your job for 2 years because that's how organizational change happens. That could land wrong on Twitter. Yeah. But I could say the exact same thing to someone on my team, and it might land perfectly correct. So when is grit and technical resilience and, you know, old man shakes fist at cloud or Taylor shakes fist at cloud appropriate?
Young lady
and
shakes
when is
fist
it
at
not
cloud.
appropriate?
For me, it's when the trust has been established. So currently right now, I have a manager that, I don't want to say stays on me, but she gives me constant feedback, and I love it. But when I joined Spotify, I told her I wanted to be a director of engineering in 5 years. And she said that was a very aggressive goal, but she was going to help me get there. So she stays on me, she gives me a ton of feedback, but I always take it with grace because I know that her impact is to always lift me up and never tear me down and trying to get me exactly where I want to go. So it's the established trust that I think makes it a bit different.
So the exact same message, regardless of identity, gender, age, all the different factors in the pie chart of who we are, could be delivered to an internet stranger, and that's being abusive, and to a coworker that you trust who you know wants you to win, can be exactly what they need to take it to the next level.
Absolutely.
And in that case, it can potentially give them meaning in their careers. Before I was a VP at Microsoft, we had this title called partner, like partner in a law firm. And my boss would tell me to do stuff, and I would always wonder, like, do I really have to do that thing? One time, I had to go and do some paper, and I didn't want to do the paper. And he says, partner up. And he was basically saying, this is the job, this is the rank, this is the title, this is the paycheck, do your job.
Yeah.
And I was like, that makes me feel some kind of way. And he's like, you still need to do your job. That was tough love.
Yeah.
But we still went to dinner that night, and we talked about life and our kids.
Yeah.
I know he wants me to win. When we were coming out on stage about a half an hour ago, you said, they want us to win.
Yeah.
So when we feel nervous, we realize that we're not ice skating uphill.
No.
This is an audience that wants us to win.
Yeah.
And if your engineering manager at Spotify wants you to win, then that technical resilience that they're insisting that you have is appropriate. But if a random person on the internet that doesn't know you or love you tells you to suck it up and get some grit, that's going to hurt.
Yeah, they're going to get
All right,
pissed
that's
out.
good advice. Thank you for that.
And so also, because our careers on average are going to be around 40 years, some of you may strike it big with a good startup exit and retire early, but on average, our careers are going to be around 40 years. We have to embrace the unknowns. There's no way that we could exactly map out what is going to happen in that career and chart along just fine, unless I guess you stay at one company for like 40 years, and even that has some like unknown bits about it. So one of my favorite quotes is from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. He is actually the author of The Little Prince, and it goes, as for the future, your task is not to foresee it, but to enable it. And I think it's so perfect because not only is he admitting that you don't have to have it all figured out, that you just have to have like a path forward that you're charting on, but also it reminds me of The Little Prince, because basically The Little Prince travels around different universes and figures out life lessons. And that's more or less how I figure out, or I consider my career to be. Learning lessons and then making adjustments along the way so that I can still make sure that I have the most fulfilling path possible. But the hard part is that because we have to embrace the unknown, it can be a bit uncomfortable. There are going to be times where you're in the mix of it and you don't know if you're drowning. And what I mean by drowning is like, you're going to go through this, a bunch of bad stuff, and almost nothing positive is going to come out of it. You just feel overwhelmed and a bit, hopeless in a way. And I think, Scott, you made a good point last night about stretch goals. Like when you're in it and you are technically drowning, but you can kind of push off.
Right, so when you're drowning, are you really drowning, or can you bounce and touch the bottom of the pool?
Yeah.
If you can, if you're 5 feet tall, but you're in 6 feet of water, That's where growth happens.
Yeah.
But if you're 5 feet tall and you were just yeeted into the deep end of the pool, then you can't even can think of the base of the pool. Then you're in trouble. Growth happens when you're stretching, not when you're drowning.
Exactly. And my equivalent of that is going to be when you're in over your head, but you're still amongst your flowers. And what I mean by that is, so like a couple of months at work, I was stressed. Like I was really reaching the end of my wits. And I couldn't decide at the time if I was drowning or if I was in over my head but amongst my flowers. And towards the end, I started to realize that, yes, I was overwhelmed, but I was actually just amongst my flowers. And the reason why I say that is because I was surrounded by a team of people that were eager to make sure that I succeeded. And so even though I was experiencing things as a manager that I had never had happen, my manager, my upper management was right there with me, coaching me through and making sure that I didn't fail. And so when you're sitting with the unknown, there will be some time where you can't decide which is which, but just sit with it. And if you decide that you're drowning, take a step away. But if you're amongst your flowers, embrace that growth opportunity and push through. And this next one is going to be one of my favorite quotes. We're going to ignore the fact that Theodore Roosevelt is only talking to men, but I think it's I think it's absolutely amazing. I changed it to person in the title here. And so it goes, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error." Anytime I am doubting myself or I feel like I can't push through, and I know there are sometimes reasons why people can't push through, any number of reasons, I'm not talking about that, I remind myself that I get credit for being in the fight. I'm not going to have everything figured out, but I'm working at it, and I'm going to make my way through, especially with the support of my community. And so I want to remind folks of that. Again, give yourself some grace, because by embracing these unknowns, you never know where it is going to take you. Like, even here, this is me attending my first Strange Loop in 2017. I was sitting right over there with some of my coworkers. James sleeping in this is not a sign of the quality of the talk. He was very tired from travel. But at this time, I was on that path to be a senior software engineer, had just started at this startup. And if I'm being 100% honest, I wasn't even excited to come to Strange Loop. It was the only conference I could afford. And so my team ended up convincing me. I ended up coming here, and lo and behold, Strange Loop became my #1 conference. To the point where even this year, I was catching up with some of my friends, and I was like, "Oh, I'm keynoting my favorite conference." And everybody, literally every single one of them was like, "Strange Loop." And so I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "How did you know?" They're like, "You literally have not shut up about that conference for what feels like a freaking decade." And so there's no way that 2017 Taylor could have known that she would not only no longer be on the IC path, she would be an engineering manager, no longer obsessed with working for small companies, but working at a decent-sized company like Spotify. But that also, at the time, I wasn't even like caring about talking at conferences, that I would be talking at the last conference for Strange Loop and keynoting it with Scott Hanselman, who at the time I knew of, but I wouldn't have, no offense, I wouldn't have considered him a friend. But now, but now I very much consider him a friend, just because I feel like we've grown closer and whatnot. So by embracing the unknowns, being willing to go to St. Louis, even though I wasn't sure that I wanted to, I was able to connect with people and be enriched by this community of amazing Strange Loop attendees over the years, and be able to have this experience, which I'm really grateful for.
So what I'm hearing, though, is that there was a master plan, that your entire career was orchestrated. You planned it all out. You took like vision boards and stuff.
Oh yeah, you've seen them.
Yeah, I've seen the vision board, absolutely. How much was it planned? Because I feel like people are constantly coming up to me and saying, "How do you manage your personal brand?" Right, and mostly my personal brand is just like shit posting animated GIFs of Neil Patrick Harris. That's not, that's got me this far. How much is it being a plan, and how much of it is being intentional about being open to the possibilities?
For me, I like to do a lot of medium-term goals. And then as I'm like charting my way through those medium-term goals, like checking in with myself to see what I'm feeling. Like, okay, like when I first joined Spotify, I said I wanted to be director of engineering. I've been at Spotify now for 2 years, and that role is looking questionable to me. So like, I no longer know if I would want to put up with the things that a director of engineering would want to. I'm still continuing on that path, medium-term goal, and just figuring out which ways I'd want to go as I get closer to it.
Do you ever have that thing where you bump into people from back in the day and they're like, oh, I knew you were going to do great things, and I knew you were going to do whatever, and you're like, I didn't.
Yeah, I feel like it's easy to say now. Like, of course you did, you say that now.
Yeah, with hindsight, we're able to go and look at these things. When I did my thank you tour, I was going around, and they were all like, oh, we knew you do great things, and like, I'm sure you planned it all out. I'm like, no idea. But I was looking for meaning, and that meaning was kindness, people I enjoyed going to work with, like having a decent boss. Like, it's almost more important that you have a good boss than you enjoy what you're working on.
Absolutely.
Because a horrible boss will betray you.
Yeah, 100%. And also like eat away at your like energy and your ego. Like, I think that one of the game changers for the last 2 years and the reason I've been able to grow the way that I have is because I have such a supportive manager that just pours into me nonstop.
But where do you see the difference between goals and plans? I think sometimes people use those things interchangeably.
I feel like plans are more detailed. Like, it's like down to the bones, like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. Right now, I'm like, okay, director of engineering, I don't wanna say pie in the sky, it's a very reasonable goal for me to have. Maybe not 5-year goal, but, or now 3-year goal, but, you know, there's a goal and kind of like loosely working through it.
Right, and goals can change, and goals can be happy, be content, be able to put my bills on auto pay.
Yeah.
That's a great goal.
It is a great goal.
Being able to do that, double meat at Chipotle was a goal for me.
All the flexes.
Now, I just constantly, carne asada, dose.
Triple guac.
Absolutely. And then being able to expense it.
Oh, even flex on flex.
I'm just going to say. But then making a plan. We said plans third, trying to just de-emphasize. Like, have a plan, but understand that life is just a series of scrums.
Yeah.
You're going to do these iterations. If you're heading in the general direction of your goal, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
But if you make a perfect plan and then you miss, you're going to be sad. I missed the target. But you are kind of heading in that direction.
Yeah. And also, like, life is full of so many unknowns. So, like, nothing is ever going to go 100% exactly the way you plan it. So you might as well not even fully try.
Like this talk.
Yeah.
We practiced this a bunch of different times. We're like, where are we going to stand? How far are you going to step? I'll step back. And then we were literally in the hotel last night trying to figure out, we almost got to the masking tape part on the ground. We're like, I think that would be weird to have marks to stand on. But then we're like, no, we know what we want to say. We know how we want people to feel. Yeah. The point is, if you find meaning, that meaning might be, I want to work on this language, I want to work with these people, I want to work at this company. Yeah. It might be, I want to move the ball forward for healthcare or for music or for social justice or for whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And as long as you're moving towards that, you're going to find some meaning. So we have a little homework for you.
Yeah.
Here's your picture. This is the one where you take a picture. So we'll just pose and you take a picture and here's your homework. That's our anime. So first thing on how to build a meaningful career is avoid comparison. Comparison is the thief of joy. We've talked about that. Try to live as intentionally as possible. Taylor talked about grace. Grace is something that you have to give yourself intentionally. You have to just stop for a second and you go, yeah, that sucked, but it's going to be okay.
I like that timer thing your mom said.
Oh yeah, my mom.
Let's talk about Scott's mom.
So I screwed up at work. I was on this call, freaking virtual. I've been virtual at Microsoft the entire time. So I'm on this call, and I thought it was like a call of like 8 people. And they were like, hey, why did this thing happen? And I was like, it was a failure of marketing. And then I looked at the call. It wasn't an 8, it was 81. There were 81 people on the call, including marketing. And then, you know the little pop-ups that happen on Windows is called Toast, where it's just like, boom, boom, and they're like, so-and-so's chatting you, so-and-so's teamsing you or whatever. So I said, oh yeah, it was a failure of marketing. I was like, bump, 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 bump. So my boss was like, that was a miss. So then I immediately felt like, oh, this is it. This is how the badge gets deactivated, right? And then I was like, well, no, because I have to go through all the stages of guilt. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I'm speaking truth to power, man. You guys suck. No, but it turns out that you can speak truth to power quietly in one-on-one meetings, and not in recorded group meetings. So I immediately took the L, apologized, called the people who weren't on the call and warned them that the call was coming. And I also explained why I felt that way, and we fixed it.
Yeah.
But man, 25-year-old Scott would have taken that totally differently. But now educated, experienced Scott was like, yep, that was a learning opportunity. I felt it in the moment.
It also sounded like you VP'd up.
I VP'd up.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. And I did some hard work. And doing hard work helps you grow.
Yeah, that's a lot of uncomfortable conversations too, but you did it. So I'm very proud you did.
So a little additional homework for you, Taylor, right on the right there.
Yeah, giving yourself grace. I know Scott just touched on that. Long careers, there's no way we can get it all perfectly right. You're human. It's all part of the process. And your motivation is yours and yours alone. Whatever motivates you, it's more than okay. Focus on that, maximize that, and you're going to have a pretty solid career. And then embracing the unknown. Again, there's no way we can know it all, but we're doing our best along the way, and that's all we can ask for.
Yeah. We hope that you found a little tiny bit of meaning in our talk, and hopefully you're finding meaning in your careers. I know that you will find meaning, though, in some of the great talks at Strange Loop over the next couple days, and we thank you so much for choosing to spend time with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.